They said space was for everyone, a shared inheritance among civilizations, peaceful, unified, enlightened. That was before the Terran exclusion zone lit up on every galactic star map like a red skull, warning travelers away like pirates from cursed waters. And it wasn't an empty threat. Any species, ship, drone, or probe that crossed that invisible line never came back. No signals, no wreckage, just silence. I remember the first time I saw it. The Council's star chart marked the zone in blood-red arcs, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, a warning not to trespass. Back then, I was just a diplomatic attaché serving under the Solari envoy. They called it a human ghost zone, a scar on the map. But we knew better. The humans weren't dead. They were waiting. My name is Commander Alric Vane, former Earthborn Armada. Former because Earth doesn't have fleets anymore. We don't need them. Not after what happened during the year of the betrayal. Like most tragedies, it started with peace. Humanity had just joined the Galactic Concord, idealistic, naive. We shared everything, technology, culture, even blood. We gave trust. And in return, they gave us chains. It began subtly. Trade deals that bled us dry, patent laws that shackled Terran innovation, alien corporations stripping the asteroid belt while our own people went hungry. Treaties rewritten mid-negotiation, 1,000 paper cuts until humanity bled dignity. Then came the final blow, the Treaty of Orvon's Hollow. They called it a security measure, said Earth's primitive aggression needed containment. What they really meant was they feared us. And fear makes cowards do terrible things. They took our colonies, declared Mars a neutral resource hub, then sent in Vexari harvesters and left our settlements to die. They dismantled our navy in the name of peace. And then they came for the children. No one speaks of Project Sanctum now, buried in redacted archives. But I was there. I saw the abductions, the rehabilitation centers for xenosympathetic conditioning, indoctrination camps designed to breed the human out of humans. We begged the Council, pleaded for justice. All we got was silence. The same kind of silence that now greets any ship foolish enough to cross into Terran space. Then came the burn. The day Earth went dark. The planet vanished beneath a blackout field. No comms, no pings, not even a distress signal. Just gone. When the Council dispatched an investigative fleet, it vanished too. That was 10 years ago. Since then, I've heard every rumor that Earth turned savage, that humanity wiped itself out, that a virus took us. They're all lies.
Maybe those black flags the radicals used to wave. Instead, I found something worse. I found order, discipline, evolution. The humans hadn't disappeared, they had prepared, and now they were watching. The moment I crossed the threshold, I expected death. A beam weapon, a missile, a silent clinical annihilation. That's what they tell you out there. That the exclusion zone is rigged with auto-defense grids that vaporize intruders before they can speak. But nothing happened. No alarms, no hails, just silence. The only thing louder was my own heartbeat. I guided the stolen freighter, an old Varnex hauler, through black space. My nav systems died the instant I crossed. No galactic positioning, no beacon network, no sensor pings. It was like slipping into another reality. What replaced it was different. Background frequencies, faint, deliberate, too structured to be static, almost musical. Not for me, not a greeting. It felt like I was being studied, not scanned, judged. 2 hours in, I thought I was safe. I thought the old stories were just fear-mongering. Then it appeared. No sensors picked it up, no warning lights, just a shape outside my window, A ship. Human-made, no question, black as vacuum, built in angles that hurt to look at too long. No lights, no markings, no engine trails. A predator, silent, still. It didn't hail me, didn't shoot, didn't flee, it just followed. Every move I made, it mirrored. I accelerated, it matched. I drifted, it coasted beside me. No threat, no message, just quiet, impossible control. Then it vanished. Not with a flash, not a jump, just blinked out. That's when I knew. These weren't the humans I'd grown up hearing about. Not diplomats, not scientists, not victims. These were ghosts wrapped in iron. Children raised by betrayal, forged for vengeance.
You were there during the Europa colony evacuation. You smuggled children off-world during the purge. I did what I could, I said, my heart pounding. I thought everyone else was gone. I thought humanity was dead. A long pause. Humanity was dead. What you see now is something else. The lights flicked on one by one, illuminating a corridor that stretched deeper into the complex. I followed. What choice did I have? The path led to what looked like an old operations center. In the center of the room sat a chair, and in it, a man. He looked almost ordinary, pale skin, short black hair, worn jumpsuit. But his eyes weren't right. Too steady, too cold, like they'd seen too much to ever blink again. "You're lucky," he said. "We usually shoot first." "I'm not here to spy," I told him. "I left the council. I've seen what they did. I came looking for answers. And now you have them. Leave." "No." That made him twitch. I stepped forward. I didn't cross half the galaxy to go back empty-handed. I know what they did. The treaties, the betrayals, the children. I lived it. But this silence, these ghost stories, it's not enough. They think you're gone. I want them to know you're not. He stood, slowly, eyes locked on mine. "Why?" "Because I'm tired of their lies," I said. "Because they made us weak, and we paid in blood. And because if anyone deserves to be afraid, it's them." That cracked something in him, a slow smile, cold, knowing. "You're not the first to come here like that. Few leave, fewer survive. But maybe you're the kind who needs to see it for himself." He tapped a panel. A hidden door slid open. White light spilled through. "Welcome to Bastion," he said. "The last city of Earth." What I saw on the other side shattered everything I thought I knew. Earth wasn't dead. It had been reborn. Massive towers rose from scorched plains. Machines unlike anything I'd seen flew without thrusters. Construction bots moved like insects across an artificial skyline. No civilians, just soldiers, engineers, builders, all moving with purpose. It was a fortress, a machine city built for war. They led me down into winding tunnels beneath the city, deep underground, where Earth's old governments had once buried bunkers and labs. Now they called it the Crucible, a training ground for the next generation. Not with lectures or gentle words, but pain, drills, and war. One room held teens dissecting alien weapons, another augmented troops sparring in zero-G. Everywhere I looked, old Terran war banners hung beside a new symbol, a black gauntlet. You were there during the Europa colony evacuation. You smuggled children off-world during the purge. I did what I could, I said, my heart pounding. I thought everyone else was gone. I thought humanity was dead. A long pause. Humanity was dead. What you see now is something else. The lights flicked on one by one, illuminating a corridor that stretched deeper into the complex. I followed. What choice did I have? The path led to what looked like an old operations center. In the center of the room sat a chair, and in it, a man. He looked almost ordinary, pale skin, short black hair, worn jumpsuit. But his eyes weren't right. Too steady, too cold, like they'd seen too much to ever blink again. "You're lucky," he said. "We usually shoot first." "I'm not here to spy," I told him. "I left the council. I've seen what they did. I came looking for answers. And now you have them. Leave." "No." That made him twitch. I stepped forward. I didn't cross half the galaxy to go back empty-handed. I know what they did. The treaties, the betrayals, the children, I lived it. But this silence, these ghost stories, it's not enough. They think you're gone. I want them to know you're not. He stood, slowly, eyes locked on mine. "Why?" "Because I'm tired of their lies," I said. "Because they made us weak, and we paid in blood. And because if anyone deserves to be afraid, it's them." That cracked something in him. A slow smile, cold, knowing. "You're not the first to come here like that. Few leave, fewer survive. But maybe you're the kind who needs to see it for himself." He tapped a panel. A hidden door slid open. White light spilled through. "Welcome to Bastion," he said. "The last city of Earth." What I saw on the other side shattered everything I thought I knew. Earth wasn't dead. It had been reborn. Massive towers rose from scorched plains. Machines unlike anything I'd seen flew without thrusters. Construction bots moved like insects across an artificial skyline. No civilians, just soldiers, engineers, builders, all moving with purpose. It was a fortress, a machine city built for war. They led me down into winding tunnels beneath the city, deep underground, where Earth's old governments had once buried bunkers and labs. Now they called it the Crucible, a training ground for the next generation. Not with lectures or gentle words, but pain, drills, and war. One room held teens dissecting alien weapons, another augmented troops sparring in zero-G. Everywhere I looked, old Terran war banners hung beside a new symbol, a black gauntlet.
"But why wait?"
He looked me in the eye. "Because we're not done evolving. And because the longer they think we're ghosts, the louder they'll scream when we return." Before I left, he showed me one last thing, a chamber beneath the Crucible. At its center pulsed a sphere of raw energy. "That's not a bomb," I said. "No," he replied. "It's worse. It's our voice. When the time comes, it speaks first." As I boarded my freighter, one thought haunted me. The Council hadn't just created enemies when they betrayed Earth, they had forged predators. And soon, every species that watched humanity burn without lifting a hand would understand exactly why no one enters human space anymore. Because next time, we won't wait for them to come. I left Bastion with more than just answers. I left with a curse. That place imprinted something onto me. Maybe it was the silence, the perfect order, or the burning eyes of those recruits. Not with hope, with cold, trained fury. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that black gauntlet crushing the Council's seal. Not as propaganda, but as prophecy. The return to Terran space was a blur. My ship moved on auto. My mind stayed buried in Bastion. Humanity hadn't just survived betrayal. They'd weaponized it. And what terrified me most wasn't their tech. It was their patience. The Council stripped them of allies, identity, even freedom. But instead of collapsing, humanity distilled every drop of pain into something focused, something no alien species, not even the Voss or Urith, had ever developed. Resentment forged in moral clarity. Once I crossed into the neutral corridor, I contacted an old comrade, Soren Drek, half-retired mercenary, owed me a favor from the Vicari riots. He met me at Shell 7, a run-down orbital outpost outside Goran's reach. He hadn't changed. First thing he did when I docked, pulled a gun on me. "I thought you were dead," he growled. "Or worse, converted." "Nice to see you too," I said, not even flinching. "Put the gun down, Drek. I've seen worse things than you lately." His eyes narrowed. "You went in, didn't you?" I nodded. He exhaled, holstered the weapon. "Then you're dumber than you look. They're not gone, Soren. They're waiting. And what they've built? It's beyond anything we imagined." He poured us 2 glasses of something that pretended to be whiskey and sat. "I always said the Council would regret Earth," he muttered. "But I thought we had time." "We don't." I slid him a data shard. Encrypted, fragmented, but it held the images. Bastion, the Crucible, the weaponized voice. He scanned it, jaw tightened. "You know what this means, right? If the Council finds out you brought this back, they won't. Not yet." "Not yet," he snapped. "You planning to tell them?" "No. I'm planning to choose who deserves the warning." We spent 2 days decrypting the shard in that orbiting junk heap. Inside was more than images. AI code fragments, training logs, psychological warfare routines, doctrines that made even Soren, who'd seen war since he was 10, go pale. "They've turned war into a language," he said, "and they're fluent." There was one more file. A list. Not of enemies, of traitors. Names, species, individuals. Some still in the Council, others living quiet lives in exile, thinking their hands were clean. They weren't. "You know what this is?" I asked. "A death list," he replied. I nodded. "And I think they're checking names off." He stared at me, leaned in close. "You want to warn them?" "No," I said. "I want to use them." "You're insane." "Maybe. But the Council won't listen until their towers start to fall. So we show them just enough, leak the ghosts, fuel their panic. And in the chaos, we choose who burns." Soren grinned. "Now that's the Kale I remember." It didn't take long. 2 weeks after the shard leaked, a Ureth diplomat was found murdered in her own compound. Not just killed, displayed, skinned. Hung above her species flag. Carved into her chest, "You watched them suffer." The Council called it terrorism. I called it a receipt. More followed. A Vassian warlord, dead on his ship. No breach, no poison, just imploded. A message painted in his blood. This is justice. Rumors outpaced truth. Stations abandoned. Freighters claimed sightings of unmarked human ships. Silent, no comms, no ID. Some never seen again. Panic swept the outer systems. The Council called an emergency summit. I wasn't invited, but I was listening. They were cracking, accusing each other, paranoid. The same tribal fear that made them betray Earth in the first place. It was working. But what shook me was a whisper I intercepted on a private line. A Council aide, unaware she was being recorded. "We made a mistake," she said. "We thought we were taming beasts, but we were burying gods." And I knew then, it wasn't just revenge that Bastion wanted. It was a reckoning, a reshaping of the galactic order. And they wouldn't stop until every lie, every chain, every smug alien empire that once looked down on Earth had been reduced to dust. One night over a bitter drink, I asked Kale Dren, "You think they'll win?" He took a long drag from his vapor stick and said, "They already have." Why? The list didn't lie. 3 names down, 22 left. And the silence between each strike was more terrifying than the act itself. That was the genius of Bastion's strategy. No broadcasts, no gloating, no declarations of war or ultimatums for peace, just quiet execution, surgical, untraceable. Each move designed to make the next one inevitable. The galaxy wasn't officially at war, but the war had already begun. I found the 4th name in the back alleys of Kira's Drift, a commerce moon stacked like a hive. Slums, black market tech vendors, neon smoke, and the sweat of 10,000 species trading sins. His name was Karnos Yev Urith, once a senior logistics officer during the Trade Suppression Accords. He'd signed the order that rerouted Earth's vital food supplies to friendlier colonies. 7 million died of starvation that year. Quiet genocide wrapped in bureaucratic language. Now he ran a private security firm, fat, wealthy, untouchable. Or so he thought. I tracked him for 2 days, watched his routines. He traveled light, 2 cyber-modded personal guards, smug and ex-military. Good, but not Bastion good. I knew I wasn't the one meant to kill him. I wasn't elite, just an old soldier carrying ghosts. But someone was here. I could feel it, smell it in the air, like the moment before lightning strike. It happened on the 3rd night. Karnos was lounging in a velvet-lit bar surrounded by synthetic companions, puffing imported vapor leaves like a man who thought the past had forgotten him. Then the lights went out. Not the whole lounge, just his booth. Then came the sound. A scream, but not his. One of the girls slumped forward, blood leaking from her ears, dead instantly. The second tried to run. She collapsed 2 steps in, like her strings had been cut. The guards jumped up, weapons drawn. But there was no enemy, no gunfire. Just death. Karnos stood trembling. "Who's there?" he barked. "Who dares?" A whisper came. From behind him. No one saw who said it. "You watch them starve." He turned. No one there. Then his body convulsed, violent, wrenching, like something inside him wanted out. He dropped to his knees, vomiting black blood across the white marble floor. The crowd screamed. Someone called security. By the time they arrived, he was gone. Not just dead, emptied. Eyes hollow, tongue missing. And carved into his chest with surgical precision, "Your hunger fed our fire." No one touched the body. They all knew what it meant. Another name off the list. I left Kira's Drift immediately. My face was too known, and the whispers had started again. The humans are back. They're killing us, one by one. It wasn't fear anymore. It was acceptance. Entire sectors pulled out. I traveled next to the Homar Fringe, a cluster of forgotten mining worlds run by corporate slavers. That's where I found another ghost. She didn't give a name, just an alias, Wraith. She was Bastion-born, trained in the Crucible, and unlike anything I'd ever seen. Not enhanced, not mechanical, perfected. She moved like a thought, silent, invisible. Watched me for hours before speaking. Her first words chilled my blood. "You followed the list." I didn't deny it. I needed to see. Now you've seen. Why tell me anything? Because your voice still carries, because you remember pain. You want me to spread fear? She tilted her head, the gesture almost human. Fear spreads itself. You're just the wind that fans the fire. I asked her about the plan, the end game. She didn't flinch. There's no end, only balance. We remove what tipped the scales, and when the ashes settle, they'll rebuild in our image. Vengeance isn't justice. No, she said softly. It's better. I should have been afraid of her. Maybe I was. But more than fear, I was convinced. Not because she spoke like a zealot, but because everything she said had already happened. Every corpse on that list, every scream echoing from the council chambers. Proof. I remembered Earth the way it used to be. Loud, wild, fractured. We weren't perfect. We bled each other more than anyone else. But at least we bled honestly. Now, we didn't bleed at all. We made others do it for us. The fifth name died days later. No one special, just another match dropped in the dry grass of a dying empire. Cleansing Day. They called him a bureaucrat, a paper pusher, but he once signed off on a prison satellite where Terran protesters were subjected to psychic dampening experiments. Rumor had it some of them still screamed in the void. He was found floating outside his orbital station. No hull breach, no suit, just naked, frozen, and grinning. They never found a breach, because there wasn't one. That was the pattern now. Impossibility killings. Murders that defied logic, delivered as message, performance, and warning. The council stopped pretending. They issued an emergency decree. All humans outside the exclusion zone were to be detained or expelled. Some fought back. Some vanished before the order even reached them. I knew it would only fan the flames. Bastion didn't need more enemies. It only needed the illusion that everyone was already guilty. And guilt was a heavy thing in this galaxy. By the time we hit Zone 7, I started feeling it too. Not guilt, not shame. Purpose. I had spent years drifting, trying to forget the war, trying to find a place where betrayal didn't burn every time I blinked. But now, I had direction again, a storm to ride, and I was done waiting. A name I remembered too well. Admiral Vern Ecris. He was the one who ordered my squad into the ice fields of Europa without backup, said it was low priority. Half my men froze to death. The rest bled out after an ambush. No medals, no funerals. Just forgotten graves beneath corporate reports. "He's on Gavros Prime," Wraith said. "Retired. Living in luxury." "Then he dies slow," I replied. I didn't ask what she meant. I just watched her vanish into the shadows and felt the galaxy grow one shade darker. I didn't sleep the night before. Not out of guilt. That died the day Earth went dark. It was something colder. A pulse under my skin. Like I could feel it coming. Like the galaxy itself was holding its breath, waiting for judgment. Vern Ecris wasn't just a name in a file. He was my ghost. 2 decades ago, he stood before a council tribunal and justified sending us into the Europa sinkhole. Tactical containment, he called it. Expendable assets with low strategic value. We were Terran Marines, the last loyal unit before the disarmament. To him, we were just numbers. The few of us who survived were scattered, discharged, erased. I carried the scars in my bones. I still limped when it rained, still coughed blood on cold mornings. He retired with honors, built a mansion on Gavros Prime, surrounded himself with exotic servants, antique metals, and the smug security of the winning side. Wraith called it Cleansing Day. She said Bastion had been watching him for months. "You gave us the location," she told me. "This one is yours to witness." She didn't offer me a weapon. She didn't have to. This wasn't a kill. It was a sentence. We landed on Gavros Prime under forged diplomatic codes. The skies were a sterile blue. The cities lined with polished marble. Fountains singing lullabies in 5 languages. A haven for the old elite, the war profiteers, the architects of betrayal. They built paradise from the bones of the conquered. Ecris's estate stood on a cliffside like a crown, guarded by drones and private security. I expected resistance. Instead, I got silence. Wraith moved ahead of me, cloaked in shadows, unarmed, but deadlier than any arsenal. Her eyes scanned everything and settled on nothing. She was already inside the kill. We entered through the main gate. No alarms, no resistance. The guards were already dead. One slumped at a console, eyes glassy, lips frozen mid-sentence. The other lay by the wall, surprise still etched on his face. No blood, no struggle. They never saw. He sat reclined watching old war footage on a projection wall. Medals, speeches, images of himself shaking hands with council delegates, smiling through thin lies. He didn't look surprised. "I was wondering when they'd come," he said, still facing the screen. Wraith didn't speak. She circled behind him, a silent reaper in human form. I stepped forward. "Vern Ekris." He smiled. "Bram Halden, you were one of mine, weren't you?" "Europa," I said. "You sent us to die in -50 storms so you could draw attention away from another front. You fed us to ghosts." He nodded. "Yes, I did." No flinch, no apology. "You think honesty buys you mercy?" I asked. "No," he said, "but perhaps understanding." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because he actually believed it. "I understood the moment I joined Bastion," I said. "I understood what you and the Council created." He turned to face me. His eyes were old, clouded, but not afraid. "I gave you clarity," he said. "Purpose. Before the betrayal, humanity was soft, fragmented, petty. It was our betrayal that made you what you are. You should thank me." Wraith stepped forward. Her face caught the light. Young, barely 30, but her eyes were ancient. She knelt beside him, pulled a device from her satchel, a small metallic sphere glowing faintly blue. His breath hitched. "You know what this is?" she asked. He nodded. "Neural stinger?" "No," she said coldly. "It's history. Yours." She pressed it to his temple. The device activated, lights flared, his body stiffened. Then he began to speak, not words, confessions. Every order, every decision, every lie. The device ripped the memories from him, forced him to relive them aloud. He didn't scream from pain, but from despair, because he remembered who he really was. News, places, buried projects. He begged someone named Merrick to stop, probably a subordinate long dead. He sobbed, then went silent. Dead. Wraith removed the device and stood. "Why?" I asked. "Because the galaxy needs receipts," she said, "not just bodies." We left the estate untouched. By morning, his confession had already leaked. Bastion's network was precise. Select council members woke to the full file on private comms. Some denied it. Others went silent. A few tried to run. None succeeded. Gavros Prime went into lockdown, claiming a terrorist strike. The media called it an isolated incident, but no one believed that anymore. Not now. The war had officially begun, not with fleets or invasions, but with a whisper that bled into a scream. And the galaxy finally understood. No species enters human space, not because we won't let them, but because they might not come back whole. Or worse, come back knowing what they truly did. War doesn't start with a bang, not anymore. It begins with hesitation, with missed calls, with nervous glances in council chambers, a fleet that ignores a distress signal, a senator who suddenly falls silent mid-speech when the lights flicker. Now everyone watches the shadows, not the stars. I watched from the edges. The kill list was more than halfway complete, 12 names silenced, half a dozen more vanished. Runaways. People who knew they were next but had nowhere left to run. Their wealth couldn't shield them. Their titles meant nothing. Bastion wasn't hunting status, it was delivering balance. But something changed after Gavros Prime. The killings weren't silent anymore. Wraith called it the turn. "It's not just punishment now," she said. "It's pressure." I didn't ask what she meant. I saw it for myself. The Urith system collapsed in a single day, not from fire, but from fracture. 3 of their key planets seceded from council governance. Broadcasts flared up showing archived war crimes against humans. Entire towns declared neutrality, or sympathy for Bastion. Riots erupted. Alien cities torn apart by their own citizens, students, workers, even soldiers demanding answers, justice, truth. The council called it manipulation, but the people knew better. The lies had festered too long. By the time the 14th name was struck, a former diplomat who'd overseen Terran child reconditioning camps, the cracks became canyons. I was at a transit hub called Sigma Verge when the real break happened. A council fleet, Urith invasion ships combined, entered orbit. Officially for inspection, unofficially to root out sympathizers and seize Terran cargo. They underestimated how many sympathizers there were. It started with whispers. Then someone shot a soldier. Then another. The power grid failed. When it returned, half the station was gone, torn apart by internal sabotage. Vents had been reprogrammed to flush soldiers into the void. Drones repurposed. Explosives planted weeks in advance, strategically, precisely, mercilessly. The entire left wing collapsed into the planet's gravity well. Over 12,000 dead. And in the surviving command center, painted in thick red, "You do not get to forget us." I survived only because I wasn't meant to die there. Bastion had agents on the station, ghosts in the crowd. One of them pulled me into a maintenance shaft minutes before the breach. I never saw their face. They just said one thing: "You're still useful." Then they vanished. After that, the galaxy began to devour itself. Trade routes shut down. Council alliances fractured. Trust turned toxic. Everyone was either a target. Even species that had stayed neutral began choosing sides, not because they believed in Bastion, but because they feared ending up on the list. Because guilt echoes in cowards. And the stars were full of cowards. Desperate for control, the Council recalled its fleets from the outer colonies. Every major world became a fortress, curfews, surveillance, dissent criminalized. It backfired. When the people you've oppressed for generations finally see fear in your eyes, they don't run, they rise. Entire populations declared support for the Terran cause, not out of love, but because the enemy of their enemy had become something more, something righteous, something unkillable. That was Bastion's brilliance. They didn't need to win battles. They let fear do the fighting. I returned to Shell 7 briefly, found Sauron, drunk and laughing at a cracked screen playing council propaganda about resisting the Terran uprising. He poured me a drink. "They're late to the funeral," he slurred. "This war ended the day Earth went dark. They still think they control the narrative. Let them. Their words are hollow now. It's not about stories anymore, it's about memories." He was right. Everywhere I went, I saw memories waking up. Old Terran sympathizers crawling out of hiding. Children of refugees forming quiet networks. Non-humans who had lived among Terrans, who had loved, bled, and survived beside them, beginning to speak. They told their stories about the purges, the camps, the sterilizations, the education centers that rewrote history and turned Earth into a villain. And suddenly, the galaxy started listening, because no amount of council broadcasts could stop the truth from bleeding through. That was Bastion's real weapon, not ships, not guns. Remembrance. I got a message from Vera Kale soon after Sigma Verge fell. One word: soon. I didn't need to ask what it meant. The final phase was beginning. I traveled to a neutral moon called Harrow's Fall, remote, cold, quiet. It was once a black site prison where the Council held Terran defectors for interrogation. That site was ash now, but the memories still lingered. Bastion had turned it into a meeting ground. There were 5 of us, ex-military, Terran-born, long forgotten. Vera arrived last. She laid out the plan. We weren't going to invade the Council, we were going to expose it. A single coordinated strike on a galactic broadcast network, one that reached over 60 systems, not to kill, not to threaten, to show the truth. Records, footage, eyewitness accounts, proof. Everything the Council buried, every crime they committed against Earth. This time, they wouldn't be able to bury it again. I looked around at the others, tired faces, hardened eyes. None of us were heroes. We were just done pretending the galaxy was good. We're not trying to make them love us, Vera said. We're making sure they never forget us again. I nodded. And for the first time in years, the operation would begin in 2 weeks. I left Harrow's Fall knowing the final storm was coming. Not a war for land or glory, but a reckoning, one built not on conquest, but on truth, sharpened like a blade. And when it fell, no species, no government, no empire would ever dare enter human space again. Because now, they understood. We weren't victims. We weren't survivors. We were the reckoning they had begged the stars to forget. There was no launch countdown, no trumpets, no battle fleets carving through the void. It began with a flicker, a moment, one too brief to notice unless you were watching. Every major broadcast channel, council-controlled or otherwise, flickered at precisely 2:07 Standard Galactic Time. Just a single silent second of static. Then, back to normal programming, political debates, market indices, cultural specials. Most dismissed it. Until it happened again, exactly 27 minutes later. And again, this time the static stayed. Every screen across the galaxy went dark, and when the signal returned, there was no anchor, no studio, no anthem, just a face. Old. Weathered, human, mine. My voice was steady. My name is Bram Halden, former soldier, former servant of the Galactic Council, a man who once believed in peace, until I saw what that peace cost my people. I had recorded it 3 days earlier on Harrow's Fall. My face wasn't chosen because I mattered, it was chosen because I was familiar. A Terran relic, a symbol of the forgotten. Behind me, the video shifted. Unedited footage, raw archives, the dismantling of Earth. Freighters packed with stolen Terran resources, children dragged from homes, entire cities bombed for pacification, interrogation chambers, genetic experimentation. The galaxy watched in silence, because they couldn't look away. My voice walked them through each atrocity. This is what the Council built, not unity, not peace, control, and they feared what they couldn't control, a species that refused to kneel. Another shift. The camps, footage of Terran prisoners, malnourished, beaten, experimented on, women in sterilization wards, boys turned into drones through neural splicing. Testimonies from survivors, from non-human defectors, doctors who confessed. They called us volatile, dangerous, but the truth was simpler. They feared what would happen if we stood equal. The broadcast lasted exactly 27 minutes. It ended with a single message, white text, black screen. No species enters human space, because now they remember why they shouldn't. Silence followed. Not because the signal cut, but because the galaxy didn't know how to because the people had seen. Riots broke out in 7 major council-aligned systems. Police stations burned. Military barracks were bombed from within by their own soldiers. On Chatar 9, alien students occupied their governor's estate and live-streamed their own confessions. How they supported the council. How they stayed silent when Terran children vanished. Across neutral worlds, bastion banners appeared, not flown, etched, quiet, permanent, as if someone had carved the message into the very metal of the planet. I received one. Final message from Wraith, and untraceable data packet,
Wraith's final message. Encrypted within it, a list of planets where the Council had begun preparing for a counterstrike. A preemptive assault. They weren't going to wait for Bastion to strike again. They were going to strike first. Her message was simple. Let them. Let the people see. Let the galaxy witness who they really are. It was genius. Bastion didn't need to win with weapons. It had already won the war of memory. And the moment the Council's fleets opened fire on worlds now sympathetic to the Terran cause, the rest of the galaxy would turn. The final blow wouldn't come from humans. It would come from everyone else. That night, I walked outside the relay bunker. The stars above were the same ones I'd grown up under, cold, distant, silent. But they didn't feel distant anymore. They felt ours. We had made them watch, made them remember, and now they were afraid. Not of ships, not of weapons, of truth. Because now the galaxy understood. You don't erase a people and expect silence. You don't build empires on bones and expect loyalty. And you don't betray humanity without consequence. The next chapter wasn't ours to write. The seeds were planted. The fire was lit. And, for once, we weren't the ones burning. The reckoning begins. The Council struck first. Their warships descended on the planets named in Wraith's data. Military dropships rained onto refineries. Communications arrays shattered. Fleets engaged. Villages labeled as sympathizers were bombed. Strategic worlds seized. But it was already too late. For the first time, they were the aggressors, painted in their own crimes. Every system that had received Wraith's coordinates flipped overnight. Thousands rose up, uncloaking their allegiance to Bastion. Civilians, soldiers, even Council officials. Not as human allies, but as human. They turned. They captured bases. They exposed more evidence. They broadcast live testimonies. They hijacked Council channels with photos of refugees, now welcomed, healed, clothed. The narrative shifted. And just like that, the Council became the game.
It wasn't a military campaign. It was a moral uprising, fueled by truth, vindicated by justice. In orbit above reformed Urith Prime, I stood aboard a Bastion cruiser. Sleek, silent, black. Wraith stood beside me at the observation port. No speech, no gesture. She didn't need one. The retreating Council fleet said everything. They burned their own flags, literally. Crews jettisoned Council banners into the void. Some factions swore neutrality. Others pledged allegiance to Bastion, but they all did the same thing. They acknowledged who the galaxy now served. I turned to her. "What now?" I asked. She looked at me, face hard, eyes sharper. "Now we rebuild," she said, "not to dominate, but to lead, to show a different path." I pictured the crucible underground. The sphere. The voice they never used, not for bombs, not for conquest. It was something else. A weapon of revelation. A tool to force truth upon those still willing to lie. I asked her about it. She nodded. "We'll need it," she said, "because after the reckoning comes accountability." Some humans would lead. Others would stand trial. The tech sector would shift, security protocols rewritten, interstellar treaties drafted in fire. Peace hadn't returned, not yet, but honesty had. The final act unfolded on the former Council grounds. The Grand Hall, once a place of diplomacy, now cracked, stained by protest, draped in Terran banners. I entered with Bastion's truth delegation. dozens strong. Humans, Urith, Voss, Gavi defectors. They carried dossiers, memos, footage, signed testimonies. The council sat across from us, many seats empty. Leaders gone, some fled, others disgraced or dead. I stepped forward. I didn't introduce myself. They already knew who I was. They already knew my story. I laid down the charges, on paper and hollow: starvation, genetic experimentation, mass silencing, forced disarmament, assault on planetary sovereignty. Each line a stroke in the ledger of cosmic crimes. The council listened. They looked tired, broken, afraid. When I finished, I said, "You stripped humanity of life, agency, rights. Now give back what you stole." Then, silence. Votes were cast, verdicts delivered. Guilty, on every count. Truth imposed itself across the hall. The council was stripped of power, key members exiled, reparations ordered. A galactic tribunal formed to oversee reconstruction. The quiet after. In that moment, the galaxy shifted. Not by vengeance, but by remembrance. I used to think victory would feel like triumph, like fireworks over the ruins of our enemies, like justice carved into the bones of the guilty. But standing there, staring at Earth from the tribunal's observatory deck, I realized something. Victory feels like nothing. No sirens, no alarms, no broadcasts, just silence. Not the haunted silence of betrayal, but the settling dust of truth. I walk the tribunal now as an advisor. Bram Holden, former soldier, former fugitive, former ghost. Now, just a name. Inked on 100 testimonies. A witness, a survivor. Most of my unit didn't make it. Those who did vanished to forgotten corners, drifted into exile, rage, shadow. But fate, if it exists, had other plans for me. So I stayed, not for glory, not for revenge, to remember. The tribunal, it's vast, larger than anything humanity ever built before the collapse. Stone and metal from every world that took part in the reckoning. A monument to unity, to memory, but also to scars. You can see them. The jagged tower edges, left by Gavari engineers as a reminder of their silence. The black ink murals by Urith artists depicting the burning of Terran archives, overlaid with the faces of the lost. Even the walkways are uneven, not by accident, but by design, so no one walks in comfort. Final entry, Bram Holden. Here no one forgets. I attend the monthly sessions, listening to the new nations argue over currency standards and trade routes. It's mundane, tedious, but it's peace. Real peace. The kind you build from ashes. The kind that costs something. Not every species was ready for what Bastion did. Some still call us monsters. Assassins, manipulators. And they're not entirely wrong. The truth broadcast shattered more than just the council. It fractured entire civilizations. Families turned against one another. Cultures collapsed under the weight of what they had enabled. But those wounds, they're healing. Slowly, painfully. And this time, openly. There are no more secrets now. Rael disappeared 3 months after the tribunal was formed. Left no trace. Some say she died. Others claim she returned to the Crucible, training the next generation of Terran defenders. Not warriors, historians. She was never meant to lead the future. Her job was to end the past. And she did. KL, my old friend, my drinking partner, my devil on the shoulder, opened a bar on a free planet called Holver's Reach. It's called the Ember's Wake. He serves soldiers, trade.
Back on Earth,
Things are slower now. Cities are being rebuilt, not in steel, but in care. Gardens grow where factories once choked the sky. Schools stand where bunkers once lay buried. Children laugh again, in the open. But the scars remain. Craters, blast-marked walls, empty museum shells bombed during the council's cultural purges. No one touches them. They stand like old friends at the edge of civilization, quiet, watching, reminding. Earth isn't angry anymore. It's awake. Sometimes, during the long nights, I walk the Atlantic ruins, what's left of a coastline drowned in the orbital bombardments. I walk alone, not because I'm lonely, but because some memories demand solitude. The stars are clearer now. The orbital shields that once blacked out the sky, used by the Council to suppress human signals, are gone, torn down, dismantled, recycled into the Tribunal's foundation beams. Some call that poetic. I call it necessary. Let them walk on the metal they once used to silence us. Let their children learn truth by standing on the bones of lies. The new generation is different. They ask why before they ask how. They read old Terran history and question it. They don't salute the flags we died for. They plant new ones, smaller, gentler, wrapped in hope, not fury. They don't want another Bastion. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe Bastion was a blade, meant to be sheathed once the blood was drained. Not forgotten, just put away. There are rumors, always rumors, that rogue Terran cells still operate along the outer fringe. Fanatics, people who believe the reckoning didn't go far enough, that every non-human species should pay for what happened while Earth burned. I don't agree with them, but I understand them, and I watch them closely, because the truth is, we're not above repeating history. No one is. That's why the Tribunal exists. That's why we remember, because once you forget, the cycle begins again. This morning, I received a message, encrypted. No sender tag, but I recognize the style. Rael. Just 4 words. You did it, Bram. I sat with that message for hours, stared at it, read it again and again, and I realized something. I never wanted to win. I just wanted it to end. The fear, the silence, the feeling that humanity had become a warning sign instead of a civilization. And maybe now, we're something better. Not a warning, a reminder that you can't silence a species, you can't rewrite truth with policy, and that when you push a people into darkness, sometimes they don't die. Sometimes they become the fire. Final entry. My name is Bram Halden. I fought in the Europa campaigns. I watched Earth fall. I walked through the ashes of Mars and stood on the ruins